Hello and welcome to 5 Minute Sociology with me, Adam Melvin. On today's episode, we're going to look at the new right. Now, again, this is a bit like collectivism, where it's not necessarily a sociological theory. However, it is more of a political ideology, but it has some sociological application in the sense that it affects the way society works and the people within that society. Okay, so the new right has been used and is still used today to mean lots of different things. So we're thinking of the new right as in the political ideology and the kind of social ideology around the time of Thatcher and Thatcherism in Britain. Okay, so we are thinking of the Thatcher years basically when we talk about the new right. Now, why is it called the new right? Well, if we think of the political spectrum, so on the right we have, on the far right of the political spectrum, if you imagine a line with left and right on it, on the far right we have fascism. On the far left, we have communism, and then either side of the centre, we tend to have the kind of political parties that we see in the United Kingdom. So, to the left of centre, we would see Labour Party, and to the right of centre, we would see the Tories as well, which is where Thatcher would have sat or did sit. So that's important to bear in mind, because certain values, and if you remember we talked about norms and values, certain values come along with Thatcher's policies and the new right. Now, some of the main things that we can think about just before we get into any more detail is that the new right values are that of very traditional values. Generally, right-wing politics is more traditional in the way that those people think and behave and how they think society should behave. For example, they would be more for the traditional nuclear family. So, male, female, children, kind of a traditional family setup. The nuclear family, we would call that. As opposed to any other kind of more sort of modern combination of family. Some other things we should think about, just while we're talking quite generally, is if you remember in collectivism, which was about shared responsibility and looking after the vulnerable within society, the new right, we can see it as opposite to that. So whereas the state, if you remember I mentioned the state, which is the government in collectivism, had a lot of involvement in people's lives with welfare, looking after the population, the new right saw that as a negative. Okay, so they felt that if people were helped too much, then they would never get themselves out of a debt, maybe, or they'd never get back to work. So we see the new right and Thatcher's administration, we see them having a much more hands-off approach when it comes to people within society. So that's quite good. You can draw the comparisons between collectivism and the new right there. Now, we can't look at the new right without talking about Thatcher, because Thatcher was key in the new right policies and the era. So who was Thatcher? Well, Margaret Thatcher was the first British female Prime Minister, from 1979 to 1990. So, quite a long time there. And she made some major changes to the welfare state. Now, I'm not going to get into Thatcher and what people think of Thatcher or, opinions. There's lots out there you can read and you can look at the policies. I'm just going to highlight this from the point of view of a political theory, okay? So I'll leave it up to you to go and gather your own ideas about the time. But I am just here to kind of give you the information surrounding these theories. But you will notice that, as I said, collectivism versus the new right, there's quite a lot of difference in terms of their approaches.